welcome to another Bruce Starr Show. This is exciting stuff. I've got to tell you, I've been a part of the comedy world since 1981. I just took myself from this comfortable living in Boston, Massachusetts. I got in my car and I drove across country because I was sure I wanted to be in show business. I had some friends come during the writer's strike and they said, come on out, we'll help you, hook you up, you'll love it. So I got in my car and went out there, and my one friend out there, Mitch Ween, picked me up, pushed me out the door in front of the Improv and said, go in here. This is where you'll live from now on. And it's exactly what happened for the next 5 years. I had a great experience being around comedy, being around the golden age of stand-up comedy, the 80s. I was there for 5 years. It was a fantastic experience. I got to know so many of the guys, and one of the guys that I've gotten to know and stayed in touch with, I don't know why I'm so lucky, but Rick Overton and I have stayed in touch. Maybe thank God for, the internet, but we've done several shows together over the years after I left the business. Some of the comedians, they kind of look down on someone who left the business and really don't give them the time of day, but not Ricky Overton. Ricky, thank you so much for doing another show with me. I really appreciate it.
Have I been on this whole time?
No, now you're on.
What's that? Oh, hang on. I'm trying on my new Giuliani's here. They're imported. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's just really wonderful to see you.
That's great.
It's a little frightening that we've known each other since 81, which is 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, I used to see you get up there and perform. And not only did you get up there by yourself, but you got up there with some of the greats. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Ricky, tell me, how did a sane guy like you ever decide to get into the world of comedy?
My father loved Jonathan Winters. Jonathan Winters was very improvisational and free form, and my father was a jazz musician who was very improvisational and free form, even though he was a composer, which had to do with order and structure. He had to find the structure in that chaos. And so he loved verbal jazz, which is a thing that Jonathan did. And so he would play those records for me, and I thought it was great. Even if I didn't understand all the layers of what it was, there were so many fun things in there. I fell in love with it. And with Bob Newhart, and my dad was getting me some pretty sophisticated stuff early on. And I think in some way he might have been subconsciously grooming me to fulfill another part of the dream that he was not able to completely step into the world of as well. Wow. Even though one of his desires. And there's a weird thing about being cool, because when you're a jazz guy, you're the coolest guy of all. But when you're cool, it's not the same thing as being funny, because it's the opposite of vulnerable.
Oh, that's right. Your dad was the jazz guy in Manhattan.
He worked out of Manhattan, out of what was called the Jazz Loft. And you can look up the Jazz Loft. They were inventing bebop there. And so he worked with Thelonious Monk and lots of greats. And it was an introduction for me into things that had kind of like an edge to them and a free form format to them. And the comedians who did that were really, I thought, my intro into a world that didn't overlap onto my father's. I wasn't stepping on his toes. And I was getting a show done without a big bus full of instruments too.
Easier, huh?
Lighter travel, yeah, and less studying.
So when did first moments for you when you said show business, comedy, other than, after you got a chance to see those great guys?
I just started to sneak in, man. Remember that first time you got a laugh in class? Remember that?
Yeah.
The girl that wasn't looking at you before suddenly goes like this and looks at you and like, oh man, I'm hooked now. You get a laugh in class. That's it. Or get a laugh in a play, a school play. You get a laugh. Oh, gotcha. And I was pretty hooked early on. I knew I wanted to laugh. I knew it. I knew I'd have to give up lots and lots to get it too. But that I get a lot back. You trade. It's a time is money. Money is energy. Whatever is so much for this, so much for that. And I put a lot of it into that. I knew in school I wanted to laugh.
And how did you break into the New York? How did that happen to the New York comedy scene?
My buddy Bill Spitz said, I got a guy you need to meet. Because I was in a comedy team in high school with T-O-N-N Pastor, who is now a very successful businessman in your state of Florida. And in the meat distribution industry, he's really well set. And so to stay in comedy would not have been the same guarantee for sure. But we were a team for a handful of years in high school, and we were doing sketches and doing assemblies and having our sketch that we wrote with a curtain up. We do it. There's a sound effect, and we do the thing and laugh and thing down. Like, oh man! And we're just in high school, and we did every part of it and got a laugh. And so then his world took him off to that secure place where he is now. And I was feeling like a little vulnerable without a partner. And so I was wondering what I would do without that. Bill Spitz says, how about this guy, Roger Sullivan? And I met him at a party. And then we went to Watkins Glen, the next Woodstock concert.
Oh, wow.
And we took acid and started doing a sketch called The Hating Game, which was a spoof on the dating game, where he would super fast switch between these three weird characters, and I'd be the MC host, and I would also play the girl asking the questions of the three guys. And while the band was tuning up on stage, we had this circle of, it could have been, I'm not sure about the numbers, but it might have been 40 people laughing at us like we were a funny comedy team. I said, holy shit, we got to do this. And so for the next 5 years, it was Overton and Sullivan. And here's the thing, man, when you're just an artist and it's just everything's, just a chance to do a show somewhere, everything's kind of guerrilla. There's not that much money involved. They stay in the world of how artists treat artists. But once the money starts coming in, you're only paid for one increment of time, regardless of whether it's one or two of you using up that space on stage. So you got to split that check. And at the point you look at the economics of it, it suddenly goes from artist to artist to businessman to businessman. And the drive up is all artists and the drive back is all businessmen.
Yeah.
And then it breaks the team apart,
Mm.
And it's one of the great curses of the incrementalism of how art is treated, and not how people are treated. Not there's two talents up here. No, you are a thing, a name, an entity. And so, it took its toll. And we had a lot of fun sketches and times, but then I was scared and on my own for a while after that. And slowly, thanks to improv and people who are very generous with their time and energy, I was able to get some confidence to move out and do more things on my own.
Tell me more about that. We're obviously talking about 44th Street in Manhattan and what that whole scene was like before you came out to California.
Yeah. The improv really lived up to its name in the heyday, and you could do wild stuff on stage. It did not have to be all set. There were weekend expectations, of course. Of course, when a weekend crowd is sitting there waiting for a tighter show, some madness can still occur. But when a giant name brings the madness, it's not the same thing as when some starter guy does. So, but on a Wednesday, you could try out your new thing, man. And you could take it over to Catch and do the same thing in the Strip, And those workshops showed, I think, a renaissance, an explosion of new things that we call comedy, rather than just, here's my joke, my structure. I mean, there was such an explosion away from it that when someone came back with the old form, they got honored sort of nostalgically.
What was it? What was the old improv like compared to the new improv, and how does one make their way from New York to California?
I think part of making your way from one place to the other has to do with when you did it. I moved when it was, had to be the beginning. People debate as to when the actual comedy boom began. And some say mid 70s, and I say it really started to explode around 79, 80.
Right.
And I moved in 80 from New York to Los Angeles on the behest of Chris Albrecht, who was then transitioning over to be an ICM agent. From club manager at the Improv in New York, he was going to then join the agency and was going to bring a giant group of us guys. It would be Piscopo and Gilbert Gottfried and me and the big batch of guys. We were a giant gill net just pulled us over west, dumped us on the deck of the LA SSL, and we've swam in 100 directions and could find the different places where you could make a living back then. It seemed like an infinity of opportunities, and everybody had a comedy night. Even places that didn't do comedy or anything wanted a piece of that pie, and every place had a comedy night.
And I've said this in other videos that it opened up a door for me to be able to take friendships that I had started building with you and a bunch of other guys like you. And Barry Marta was my roommate, and he was writing for everybody in town. And between the two of us, he kind of banged me over the head and said, "Why don't you start booking these guys in comedy clubs? They're springing up all over the place. Their agents, big agents, don't want to bother." And that's when I started saying, "Hey, listen, Ricky, can I book you?" And through the friendships and through all the people that Barry wrote for, I ended up having a few dozen guys that I was making calls for. And it truly was, when you had a TV show like Evening at the Improv, oh my God.
That was a break, man. Evening at the Improv. There was an upside to it. It got you out there and seen. And the downside is that it ate your material like it was a dragon.
Whoa.
And whereas a Tonight Show shot would probably eat a piece faster, it would also not necessarily get to the Tonight Show would hit a lot of people sooner, but you wouldn't be back as soon. Whereas you probably return a lot on Evening at the Improv. So for me, I was eating chunk after chunk, and Improv to the rescue again to save the day with that. Because, I mean, what are you doing when you're writing a comedy bit anyway? You're improvising. So you're either improvising while you're writing it, or you're stealing it from something you memorized from somewhere else. Those are the two options, right? So improv really, I thought, helped with my writing to get me where I needed to be next sooner.
And, now that I hear you speaking about it, you were really one of the kings of improvisation. I think you're most comfortable with that. And tell me if I'm right or wrong. Some guys are comfortable holding the mic and doing straight stand-up, maybe like a Jerry Seinfeld or whatever.
Yeah.
But I bet you were more comfortable working with a few other guys.
Yes. And then along came Troy Conrad's really ingenious new way to do comedy as a game. And it's an improv game called Set List. And what they do is they put a screen next to you and they print a suggestion for a topic. You've never heard of this thing. You turn around and look, and you got to go and start talking cold to the audience watching you there like this with that suggestion cold, and trust that there's a part of your brain that's going to get you through this. And it's right. It does. It works.
I'll always remember, Ricky, when, I'd be sitting in the back room watching, my guys, the guys I represented and the friends and stuff. And
Yeah.
then I'd hear a stir coming in from the right side of the room. And, Robin came through the doors. And when Robin came through the doors, you were right there, right behind them. And you guys took over the stage like nobody else.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun. Generally, I'd be on stage when Robin would show up.
Okay.
I didn't usually run up with him anywhere.
Oh, okay.
I was already on, and he would come up with me. Otherwise, I don't really, it's not the same thing. So, but that happened a lot with me. We got into a regular rhythm with it. And there's a place up in the Mill Valley area of Northern California and Marin called the 142 Throckmorton Theater, and it's on 142 Throckmorton Street in Mill Valley. It's a 100-plus-year-old Victorian theater, the planks of which have been trod by Charlie Chaplin, and Robin Williams would come out and join when we were playing on Mark Pitta's night up there on Tuesdays all the time. And it was like one of our last favorite things we got to do.
And you guys really were spectacular. Nothing planned. You guys just fed off each other. Like, I know there's been shows about it, but I've yet to see two guys just so aligned and so connected with each other on stage.
It was a lucky break, man. No other way to put it. He was a dear friend and an amazing artist, and we found a separate friendship that was along with, hanging out. Actually, there was a separate thing we made that we did when we're working together. Went to a third place. I don't know how else to put it.
And we did a show together, and we don't have to talk too much about this. I'm sure the anger and the disappointment is a lot less raw than it was when we did a show a few years ago. But we did a show a couple of weeks after Robin passed, and I know it was very difficult for you even to be with me on that show, and I appreciate you doing it. What was that like for you when the whole world mourns one of the most creative guys, him and Jonathan Winters? The whole world mourns the passing of a guy before its time, but he wasn't just an incredible talent. He was your unofficial improv partner and great buddy. Tell me a little bit about him, a couple of memories about him, and what was it like for you after he did pass?
Well, knowing him was great fun. And it was a good way to see an example of how people should treat other people, because he would take the time, no matter how many people were in a group, to get a separate selfie photo with each of them. And when we're walking around San Francisco, often I'd be holding the camera to get those folks. Everybody, no, you get in now. You got to get on in there, but he really took the time to do that,
Wow.
With each person, look them in the face and ask their name and mean it, And if another group saw him from across the street, he'd look and, okay, here we go. Unless it was something with the kids, got to get back for the kids. Sorry, I got to get back. He'd just tell the truth. And they tell, like, I got household stuff, but hi, guys, and I'm sorry, rather than, would leave me alone. He never anything negative towards the people who, showed that much love to him. And knowing him was also, it was a challenge on stage because he went so fast. But that's like, do you play any sports, Brucey?
Yeah, I played them all, baseball, football, ice hockey.
Well, was there ever a player who was a friend of yours who was really good, could kick ass, and was, better than you, but you loved playing with because it made you better?
It's that guy who was able to pass you the puck. He wasn't looking at you. He was on one side of the ice.
Just do it sideways. Yeah, I like that. So that's it. There's a separate love of that. an admiration love. It has the competitor's edge it built right into it, but it's a deep and abiding love. And you add it to the other layers, you know. And so there was that. And his passing was a terrible shock, of course, that gut punched me for a while. But I had been a little bit prepared that Bob said things were not looking so great for him, but he didn't go into detail. Bobcat said that there were some troubling things. And the brevity of Robin's responses to me and texts and so on was saying that he was pulling away. And then when the news hit, it was a combination of gut punch and shock and a little bit of knowing. Whereas at certain comics, when you kind of saw the trend of something happening and then you hear the news, like Chris Farley, I was in traffic and I went, and it's a different, like, yeah, shit. It's a knowing. It's almost like you saw that coming, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't see it coming with Robin. And maybe my own prejudices against the outcome, my biases against that being a possible thing, kept me from having a sooner acceptance of it. But you know, even when Bobcat said that he was having troubles, I still put it in the positive. Those can be overcome. So it was a lot of feelings all at once. And, you know, it's weird to see, but it's actually very encouraging to see, in a strange way, all the people who'd never met him that had similar reactions. They had these feelings of they'd lost family.
Yeah.
I mean, you met him a couple of times, but
yeah, sure.
You felt like you lost it. You know, it's a giant. It was a giant thing.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me something interesting. I'm not going to come out and say it if you want to share it. We shared it already on another show. But he did go through, he had a medical procedure. And one of the most interesting things you've ever said to me was how changed.
Yeah, heart surgeries can lead to massive depressions on top of it. Open heart surgery, not every heart surgery, but open heart surgery, and where it stops and restarts, there's a lot of evidence of depressions following that. So, and look, I'm not a trained medical expert. I just know I've heard these things, and I wanted to know what happened to my friend. Other research, Lewy body dementia, now certainly as another exponent of that. These proteins.
Yeah. So, Ricky, let's go back to the improv, because you were there. You know, you were there on and off. You went on the road. Tell me about those days when you were working the improv. You know, the friendships that you had there, other than Robin, and then maybe if we could talk a little bit about what it was like going on the road, because again, when Evening at the Improv hit, Louisville, Kentucky opened up a club, Pittsburgh, you know, St. Louis, Atlanta, you name it. They opened up clubs and you were able to work.
That's the boom. It's after that point, it was the actual boom. Everything was ramping up to the boom. Some people call that the boom, that there was anything. That there was, you know, Don Kirshner's rock concert. It was a comedian. And that's precursor to the boom.
Right.
I think. The boom is when it just flourished everywhere and there's a live place everywhere, like you're saying.
Yeah, and then the problem was, do I go out on the road and miss possible interviews, auditions for sitcoms? What do I do? And I'd love to hear from your point of view. I know, exactly, right. Yeah, it's all gone already.
I guess I'll stay around now to be an actor. For that, that Richard Deacon kind of work, you know.
Tell me about that. Tell me about, you know, you had to go out and make money, and you went on the road. It was pretty good, and you had lots of experiences, but boy, it was a balancing act.
Yeah, it was a trick. They'd get calls all the time. They want you in this week. I'm in Alabama. I'm in Vancouver, whatever it is. And they want you in for this series. And there were things I could have gotten close on. Absolutely. And I was out on the road for. And I'd stay in town and nothing. You know, I'm very lucky for the amount of stuff I landed, though, I'll say.
Tell me about some of your credits, because I've seen you, in a lot of stuff. But tell me about some of the ones that were, either fun or memorable or interesting.
They're all great, Brucey.
How many improv?
I don't know. I've lost count.
Evening at the Improvs?
Yeah, I did lots and lots. I hosted. I did all kinds of stuff with them. It was a great opportunity, though. And I'm very grateful Bud and Mark and all those guys gave me the shot. So
tell me about your relationship with Bud in New York. And did it change? Any interesting stuff that went on with that?
One of the last acts he picked before he moved to L.A. So it was a brief understanding of the man before he took off. And then I was hanging out with Silver Saunders Friedman. And she was the owner and manager of the club, along with, Chris Albrecht and, club managing, and Bob Zamuda. And they were a team, Albrecht and Zamuda.
Yes.
That's a real thing.
Yes.
Before Zamuda went on to work with Andy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, I'm Andy's first shill in the audience for his Tony Clifton character to sploosh the water picture on the head of. I had to sit down front and sacrifice my set that night to be a staged plant in the audience. And Tony Clifton would say, "Hey, buddy, come up here. You want to know what's a funny joke?" I go, "What?" And he takes a picture of water, spills it over my head, goes, "That's funny." And the crowd goes, "Boo!" And I go out the side door. And then he wins him back with "I was only trying to make you laugh." You know that bit on the bongo?
Oh, God. I was in the audience when he did his cereal thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I was in the audience when he did the neck thing.
The which thing? Oh, the neck? Yeah. That's after wrestling.
So if you have any insight into who the heck that guy was, from your point of view, because nobody really understands Andy. I mean, I'm not saying the comedians didn't, or maybe they didn't. What was he? Could you get a finger on that?
Well, I'm not sure at that age I would have had the vocabulary or the wherefore to have seen it. But I saw a man who is fearless in fucking with people.
Yeah.
He was fearless at mind fucking everybody in a hilarious way. It's different from Sacha Cohen in that Andy it didn't stop when he went back to the van, the makeup van. It just stayed. It was really fantastic. Later, it's easier for these things to be pushed again because they're a little bit paved now, thanks to Andy.
Was it madness, or was it like a combination of incredible creativity? It's hard, right? It's hard to...
Depends who you ask, I guess, man. You got to ask the right people that, by right. You ask someone who's a little more conservative, and they'll say, yeah, that's all. I don't know. He's crazy. But yeah, someone has more of an artistic and open side, and they'll go, no, don't you see what he's doing? He's making society look at itself, and he's playing off of our blanket acceptance of propaganda or whatever it is. He had a lot of fun with human behavior, and certainly pro wrestling. His obsession with pro wrestling it was a social comment, but not ever said, this is what I'm doing here. Here's my intention. He became the exponent. He became the parody. He was it. He lived it. And that's what's so extraordinary, that level of commitment. Because when you do that, you're going to get all that, what we would now call a ratio for it. And he loved it. He loved the negative ratio right along with the positive. It was astounding. It was like some Star Trek episode where it doesn't matter what you shoot at it. It's fuel. It likes it. It eats it.
And you said that when he went back to the room or to the van or something, and he really wasn't all that different. Could you have,
you know, or you could just say he's Daniel Day-Lewis. He's sticking with it, you know.
Could you have, what kind of conversation do you remember having with him?
Very brief. We'd, you know, talk at the club, but you got to talk to him as Tony Clifton. When he comes in, you say, "Okay, Tony, what's the deal?" You know. Yeah, and he didn't do the makeup yet, but he didn't know if he was going to do a whole outfit and makeup thing for this. So it was just a T-shirt, his hair a little bit up, and he just take a face and, "Yeah, what do you want, huh?" No, he's just trying it out. He's not going to put a ton of work or money into this thing yet if it doesn't work. So I guess that was it. But he was trying, but you had to talk to him like it was Tony. And then you know, you're going to sit there in the audience, yeah? Then I'm going to come back, okay. There's other times when he wasn't Tony Clifton, you talk to him. "Oh, hi, good, how are you?" I remember I saw him towards the end of his life, and he was working at Cantor's. He was doing a little thing there at the Cantors, and then I saw him even later. The last few weeks of his life, I saw him at Whole Foods, and he was bald. And he glued a mohawk, but one of those cheap ones you get from Hollywood Boulevard magic shops, you know, Halloween thing. And is parodying his condition even then, you know. I think he was committed to all the world is a stage, you know.
Yeah, that's perfect, man. That is really and I really appreciate you taking your time to tell me about him, because I really had no clue. I you know, like I said, I seen him perform, and then when he did Elvis, it was like, what? It was incredible.
Yeah, it's very good impressionist, and so it makes you wonder: is everything else an impression? Is all of this a what? You know, like when you listen to Maria Bamford go from all of these different voices back to her voice. Her voice in neutral doesn't sound like it could produce all these other voices, when, of course, if that were her natural voice, that might be precisely where her imagination took her afterwards. But and has into a master's form.
So incredibly interesting. Ricky, who are some of your buddies that you hung out at the Improv with? You know, I know other than who we've already talked about.
Well, Gilbert, of course, Glenn Hirsch.
Now, wait a second. I just did a show with Glenn, so you'll see that when you get a chance to.
Glebe has been a dear old friend for many years.
Tell me about Gilbert. I mean, there's another one that, what is Gilbert? Who is Gilbert? He's another one.
Another brilliant impressionist, by the way. Gilbert is a brilliant impressionist, and not credited for it, because all these other guys, they're known impressionists, but Gilbert's one of them.
Wow. So what was it like? You hung out with him. I'm just trying to figure this out, because there's some guys I know are very quiet and subdued, and I'm just curious about him because I don't know anything about Gilbert Gottfried.
Do you listen to his podcast?
No.
It's fantastic. And he loves all our favorite old guys, you know. He's raised on all the same stuff. He loves it. So it's a fun listen. And he's now a doting father.
Wow.
To wonderful kids and a fantastic wife.
Wow.
And he's got, you know, years of funny acting, character stuff under his belt, but he's just nice. He's a nice guy with a daredevil edge in him. And if you give him a chance to say something that will shock the room, he will take it. And he'll do it knowing it might be a kamikaze run. And there's a
Fearless.
comedians got this thing, man. You give us, it's that Pandora's box of, and whatever you do, don't say da 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 before you go on. And some comics just go, okay, motherfucker. All right, you should never have said that to me. You know that's true, right? And it's a gene. It's a lupine gene in some comics, and it just starts to snarl when you say things like that. And you know, it's worked mostly to his benefit throughout his astonishing career, and a couple of times it bit him back. But it bit him back. He was doing wildly edgy things, which should be his job, and there should be no restriction on it.
Really, that's it. When he's at his best that way.
Oh, when he's daring and when he's ahead of it, when he's arch, there's almost nobody on earth that sells arch the way he does. Like he plows head on into darkness. Where some people, they skirt around, he just right down the middle.
Unexplored territory.
Yeah, that's right. He goes where it's not explored, whereas most guys stay where they know the map.
Yeah, really. And, you know, I had Glenn on the other day, and I knew Glenn. I knew him to be a great guy, but I didn't know much of him. I didn't see much of him until he told me why just yesterday. He was on the road with all the biggest stars in the world performing in Las Vegas and New Jersey.
Right. He's built one entire audience and career in a series of rooms that only fill to 15,000 to 20,000 capacity at a time.
I've mentioned a couple of times on the show when industry nights are set up for certain people, and you know it's all the industry agents and managers and producers, and you know that's when you need a room full of laughs. And I don't know how many times you've experienced it, but that's not what happens.
Oh, no, industry night. And the big gamble is, do I joke about the fact that it's industry night? And I always did. I always went inside and joked about who's actually there and made the ironic case that this can't go normally and that I liken it to doing comedy outdoors during the day. Which is like, you know, you're an ADD country. You're just one of many things they could look at this given moment. It's either you or the little girl with a sparkler or the pigeons taking off, you know. Yeah, industry night, their whole game is to play. They can't laugh because that's kind of giving an unwritten signed guarantee. And they're not allowed to do that. So they're not allowed to have any emotion. They got to go poker face through this because they have to make all the decisions later.
Can they say, that was funny?
Yeah, sure. I've seen it happen. But mostly, a lot of it is just looking at each other for approval to see which part I am also allowed to laugh at.
Wow. Great insight, Ricky.
Is on a giant spring.
Wow. Wow. Oof.
Yeah, they live in terror. They live in the terror of losing this sweet, pointless job. Most of them have, you know.
Yeah.
Ridiculously overpaid job. I am not going to fuck this up by laughing in the wrong spot. And everything is a minefield for them. Oof. And when you're pitching, it's often like that. They can't laugh at everything that they would love to because they don't want to say yes yet. And laughing is saying yes.
Wow.
So you can almost see their point, you know, and if you're in their position, you might also be thin-lipping it too, you know.
Of course. So were you in a position when you were pitching projects, and how close did you get?
Close, you know. Never developed a cigar habit.
And what about, can you name one or two of the sitcoms when you were close and just didn't quite get there, top two?
No, what are you talking about? Pitching?
No, when you were up for a sitcom.
Selling or someone else's sitcom?
Somebody else's.
I got close on SNL. Twice. I got close on SNL twice. And once was with my partner, Roger Sullivan. And we lost out to Franken and Davis. And then a second time I lost out to Charlie Rocket, who was a nice guy and a great actor, I thought. He did a fine job. I thought Dances with Wolves, he was terrific. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't going, I'm going to beat Rick Overton. He says, he's thinking I need a job too, you know, and he got it. So those are the two times that happened.
Yeah, it's people who are sitting and watching comedy or sitting and watching television. They don't know some of the incredible rejection and disappointment that goes into 90% of what goes on or more, other than the 10% that gets on.
Right. Well, that's true. Big attrition pool.
And, you know, we talked real briefly.
Like Vegas, the house has to win.
Yeah. We talked briefly about what it's like for the typical comedian our age. If they didn't get a sitcom and they didn't get that money coming in, many of them are still working, still on the road.
There's no road right now.
Oh my God, that's true. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's almost all down. There's a startup of social distance audience clubs with reduced pay and reduced everything, you know. And so we'll see where it goes from here. And Zoom comedy is doing what it does, I guess, you know, and Zoom is as close as I'm ever going to get to being on Hollywood Squares, right? But
and we talked briefly about the challenge that a lot of the comedians had who because of the way of the business, that they're not really in good shape as they reach retirement.
Yeah, if there's no pension and no future income, everything was set up on, I still work this circuit of places and they still pay this amount because my bills don't go down. My landlord's not taking the rent down from me. I gotta make the same amount of money. And if I don't have a pension, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. So the comedy never set itself up the way SAG and AFTRA did. They tried, and it just never wasn't workable. At least not that proposal at the time. And I don't think anyone would have imagined that this world would just magically dry up and go away. What possible set of conditions would produce that? So, and everyone's sort of holding on the hope that this is a lockdown, or this is a lockdown that will go away then, and it'll become a new industry, and I can be the new pioneer in the new industry. And all those thoughts must be occurring all simultaneously at once, while everyone's just hanging on for dear life. And then everyone's hanging on to the past and how this used to work. I think it's a survival mechanism that has nostalgia built into it. It's just a reference point. But I think this is where improv comes in again. I think we're going to have to be a little more free form to see what's going to happen next and what to do about it. And that's really important, is how we respond to these changes and not go in with just the fear of it no longer looks like yesterday. Because if that's the whole metric, we're going to just get clobbered over and over and over again. Reality has always traditionally been merciless with people under those conditions who just seek the past again. And look, I can't say it's comfortable always saying yes and to everything that's going on, but to at least roll with an understanding that things aren't going back. And whatever you make it next will probably be what it is. So start taking responsibility for that part. Take responsibility for, you might have to be in charge, like our great-grandparents were, or your grandparents, or whoever was in the Depression.
Right.
They had to take responsibility for some of this crazy shit going on. It's not going to look like the Roaring 20s anymore. Now we're in the Depression 30s and the Dust Bowl. We got change, and you got to accept it. The ones who don't, it's going to be bad for them. Don't let it be bad. See it for what it is. And the last time the entertainment industry exploded in that phase, and the difference of this phase is it's happening simultaneously with what would have been the lockdown plague of 1917 to 1920.
Yeah.
They're happening all at once this time, which kind of wipes out the entertainment part. So it's a new plane. It's a Dolly-esque plane, and everyone's either waiting to see what's going to happen next or trying to stake a bid for what happens next.
Wow, it's going to take some creativity to try to figure out what's going to happen next, because it's interesting. Some people got into businesses thinking, not show business, businesses thinking it's going to be around forever and ever, and all of a sudden, boom, the choice they made failed. And then some people, dumb luck, were in businesses that all of a sudden took off because of the problem. So this is quite a different and unusual and different kind of time.
Yeah. And it's very deliberately this time creating, a class of people that can't afford to pay for entertainment.
Yeah.
On any level. And so it's bringing things to a head, and I guess we're going to see where that head winds up, either up our ass or, looking towards the future.
Well, Ricky, I so appreciate you spending time, not only to share that fantastic time in the 80s when life was, life was really grand back then, wasn't it?
Parts of it certainly were. Life was a little easier back then. It's a great way to get fat and happy. Now we're losing weight and we're not so happy.
You're the best, Ricky Overton. You're the best. I cherish our friendship, treasure it, and I really appreciate you spending time with me here. And I only wish you the best. I know I'm gonna learn about you and keep up with you on the internet and find out how you're doing. So God bless, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, yes, I've got to return to my palatial estate you see behind me here, with, of course, the waving palm trees and the horses running freely on my property behind me. It's not working, is it?
So I'm gonna let you get back to that, because I don't want to hold you up anymore.
God, no wonder that app is free. All right, man. I'll see you later.
God bless. Ricky Overton, thank you for watching the Bruce Starr Show. More next time. This was great. Thanks, Ricky. Bye-bye, everybody.